Using a prepared statement makes it much easier to embed values from user input into an SQL query in a secure way. Instead of adding the values directly to the SQL, you use placeholders, and PHP does the rest. Using a prepared statement involves several steps. We'll begin by initializing and preparing a statement. This is mysqli_statement.php, which you can find in the chapter 6, 06_01 folder of the exercise files. Let's load this into a browser to see what the page contains. It's a search form with a text input field, 2 select menus, and a submit button. At the moment, the PHP script ignores the values in the form fields. So if I change this to 2010 and a maximum price of $5,000, I wouldn't expect to find many cars, if any, but if I click search, I get a complete set of results from the cars and makes table in the OOPHP database. We need to embed the values submitted by the form into the SQL query, and we'll use a prepared statement to do that. To add the search criteria, we need to create a where clause that needs to go before the order clause in the SQL. So add a new line on line 8, then where, make, and we'll use the like operator. Then we need a placeholder. MySQLi uses anonymous placeholders, which is simply a question mark. Then the AND clause, year made, that needs to be greater than or equal to, then another placeholder, another question mark, and price is less than or equal to, and a third placeholder, a third question mark. So these 3 question marks will represent the values that are being brought in from the search form. The original code on line 10 uses the query method to submit the SQL statement. That won't work with placeholders, so we need to get rid of that line. And then we need to initialize a statement. So we create a statement variable, a variable for our statement object, then use the database connection object and call a method which is stmt_init. And this will create a statement object. We can now use this to prepare the query. What this means is that the query, complete with placeholders, will be submitted to the database to make sure the SQL is valid, and also perform any optimization if necessary. And if there's a problem, an error will be generated. So we need to wrap the next bit of code in a conditional statement. So if, then not, and our statement object, and then prepare SQL. So if there's a problem with preparing the SQL, the statement's error property will contain an error message, and we can assign that to our error variable. Notice that the error is a property of the statement object, unlike the original code which used the query method. With query, any error message is on the database connection object. So that's what this code here on lines 14 to 16 were for. So we need to get rid of that. That's part of the original code. So get rid of those 3 lines. But if there is no problem with preparing the SQL and the placeholders, the rest of the code for the prepared statement needs to go in an else block. So let's just create an else block there. And then the next stage will be to bind the values to the placeholders before we can execute the prepared statement. We'll do that next.